growth mindset
Yeah,
is an amazing combination to have.
How do you evaluate for growth mindset?
but I always loved traveling a lot. So
But as e-commerce boomed in the country,
by the second or third week, I was a project manager.
That, I don't know if I don't know.
Bit the bullet. I took the ticket.
the company's been around since 2012.
Fairly different culture. It was a bit of a shock for me in terms.
Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Majlis with Rizvan. Today it's going to be exciting because we're going to talk about logistics, right? All those orders that you've been making every day, day in and day out. There are teams, there are people working behind that to actually make it a possibility. And we have with us Joao from Carriyo. Welcome, Joao.
Thank you very much for having me.
Along with us, we also have Ronak from Fynd, who is not exactly a new face to you, but then again, welcome back, Ronak.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Great. So, Joe, where are you from?
I'm from Portugal originally.
I see.
Yeah.
And how long has it been in Dubai?
Over 10 years now, a long time.
So, what prompted you to, travel half the way across the world to Middle East?
Well, I don't know really. I mean, it was a period of my life where I was kind of trying to figure out what to do. I knew I didn't want to stay in Portugal at the time. I wanted kind of maybe a bit of adventure. I had traveled a lot. And kind of part-time lived in many places in the US, worked all across Europe. I had worked in Kuwait for a while, and I hadn't been to Dubai, but I had some friends who were working in the project in Dubai. And I knew there was kind of a different dynamic from Kuwait, where I was at the time on another project. And I had two options basically, either to go to the US, and I was discussing that option, but I also got the offer from here. And I kind of, because this became the most immediate option available to me, I just, bit the bullet. I took the ticket and I came with kind of a mindset of, I'll try it for a year or two, and then we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll come back home and do something else. But, then I just stayed, married, had kids, and this is home now for me.
Wonderful. So, when you actually came to Dubai, so where were you working? What were you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And how was that professional life?
Yeah, so I joined, as I mentioned, a big retail group here in the region, which is the Shaloub Group.
How long did this professional career of you last?
At this group?
Yeah.
So I stayed there total for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So I progressed. I mean, I did their architecture for their technology team. We kind of onboarded a lot of the processes in the projects, which were outsourced mostly when I arrived.
Right.
Kind of brought them in-house. We built a nice team. We built a nice tech stack. And then when they started their digital transformation, I actually moved to the business side of things.
I see.
And I was part of the team that was kind of driving the digital transformation for the group. Did that for 2.5 years. And then that's when I left and I started Carriyo.
Great. So, Carriyo, how did that come about?
So we were doing this digital transformation project, huge project. And part of my role was to take all the brands that we had and take them online, bring them to the world of, CRM 360, omni-channel, endless aisle, all these ideas that were kind of in the Western world already adopted or in the process of being adopted. They wanted to implement it here and be kind of at the forefront of the region in terms of the development of their retail business and having a significant presence in e-commerce.
I see.
So part of my job was to push these brands to build a strategy, put their business online, and develop it. And we kind of built a good system of kind of rinse and repeat, because as I said, it was more than 40 businesses that we had to launch and grow. And so we had the right tools to do the front end, to get them online for marketing, for CRM, clienteling, customer engagement, all of that. But one of the recurring problems that we had was with integration of last mile services and the fulfillment of orders to customers in the e-commerce space. Mm-hmm. Because every time we would go to a different brand and do the process again, we would find that each brand had their own value proposition to their customer. They had their own desire of having different types of services, different delivery partners. They would work in different geographies and regions. The nature of the products were different. And so that meant that every time we were doing this, we would have to integrate with a new partner or integrate a new service or make it work in a different way.
Right.
And it just seemed like we were reinventing the wheel somehow. So we started looking for solutions to help us with that. Just like there were solutions for an e-commerce front end or for a CRM, I thought there must be something around here. But there wasn't, and we actually went and talked to companies that did it in Europe and in the US, but they didn't have presence here in the region. They could not manage specifics of the region, like managing Arabic in terms of content, or managing COD, cash on delivery. So the idea just started developing in our heads that maybe I can do this, right? And it was me and my partner Faisal. He was also in the company on the IT side, so he was actually building the tech and building the integrations and all that. I was on the business side, building the strategy, developing the strategy for that. And so we just got together, started developing the idea, and then we just decided to build something. And by the time we knew it, we had a product, we were selling it, and we started the business.
Great. So which year was this again?
So the development of the project was throughout 2019.
Right.
We started with the first developer building the product maybe in March of that year.
Got it.
By the end of the year, we had sold the product to a couple of retailers.
So right now, jumping into 2024, what could be, how big is the team? What are these some of these numbers that could probably, put Carriyo in that perspective?
Yeah, so we're still relatively small, but I think we punch above our weight, right? So right now we're a team of 12 people, growing maybe to 13, 14 this month. But we have grown very organically, right? So we're self-funded, bootstrapped.
Right.
We have not taken any external investment in, and that's the way we've been building our business, a bit by accident and a bit with intention. But that's the way we've built it so far. So I think today we are probably in the niche, in the type of product that we do, and in what we do, we're probably market leaders here in the UAE.
Wonderful.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Right.
And, we manage every year somewhere between, now it's probably, this year's probably going to be 7-8 million orders coming through the platform.
Awesome.
And growing. So pretty good.
Was it easy to get your first customer? Tell us how did you get your first customer?
So we did it, we were still, I was still working at my job. Faisal was as well. And we kind of sold it internally as we were building it. We were very careful to, we were doing this after hours, kind of, when we finished one job, we went to the second shift was building Carriyo. So it was kind of tough times. But we were very kind of careful, and we built it in a way where we were building it also to address the concerns of the company and the brands that we had. So it was kind of, in a way, it was a very nice way of us when we sold it to the first few brands, right? Or when we exited our real jobs, we were already certain that we had something in our hand because we were able to sell it to a couple of brands. And then we knew that we had something in our hand, although we didn't know if we would be successful or not. We knew that we were building a product that was relevant at least, right?
Nice. Great. So now talking about market leaders, we have another market leader here, which is Fynd. So Fynd has been a very a prominent name in the Indian startup ecosystem. So, why don't you actually say what Fynd does today, how it started, where we are today?
Sure. I think for starters, the company's been around since 2012. It's been a long journey. It was started by 3 co-founders, all of them from IIT Bombay. So we've always been reinventing and figuring it out every couple of years. What we do primarily today is we are India's largest commerce platform, both online and offline. Right. Just to simplify it, what we do is allow retailers, medium size, large size, to unify their online and offline experiences. What I mean by that is, take an example of a retailer who has say 30, 40 stores. Most of them started selling online through a warehouse, right? Multiple challenges. I think the retail systems in the past were not capable enough to allow them to utilize their existing inventory in the stores. The biggest problem that we identified back in 2012 and between 2012 and 2015 was that for these large retailers, about 80 to 90% of their inventory is in the physical stores, right, and not in the warehouse. So warehouse used to act as a distribution center for these stores,
Right.
for replenishment and stuff like that. But as e-commerce boomed in the country, there were multiple inefficiencies that were built, right? In order to service e-com, retailers started to put aside inventory in the warehouse to sell online, while most of their inventory, like I said, was still in the stores.
Right.
And when the company started in 2012, we were focused on in-store tech. So we had access to the catalog and the inventory at the stores. And now we've built a platform which integrates into the stores, get access to this inventory, almost creates like a middle layer,
Right.
virtualizes this inventory, and makes this inventory fungible and available across all channels.
Awesome.
Right. So these channels could be the brand's own D2C website. It could be a online marketplace like Amazon. It could be new and upcoming social commerce channels, or it could be one in store.
How big it is, right? The MENA region. Or let's say that, to be more specific, what are the business centers of this region? And where is the commerce happening in? What is this centered around?
Right. So if you look at, let's say, GCC region, right? Right now, this year is probably the year where we're going to get to $30 billion of e-commerce market, let's say, right? And if you add Egypt to that, then Egypt is like 10 Bs more, so hitting 40. I think for the GCC, the expectation is it will reach 50 by 2025. I don't know if that's achievable. We'll see, but I hope so.
Right.
But that's where we are right now, right?
But then, isn't this a little skewed as well? I mean, meaning, where is this coming from largely? GCC, I understand, is a collection of few countries, but having said that, where is this commerce essentially coming from?
Essentially, it's UAE, right? But actually, so first, Saudi.
Right. What percentage of this would be?
So Saudi, as far as I know, is like 13 billion coming from Saudi. Then you have 10 coming from UAE.
I see.
The remaining is other countries. And then Egypt is also around the 10B mark, so more or less at the same level as UAE.
Understood.
Yeah.
Nice. And in terms of the logistics, right? So what could be the scale of operations? Like, what could be probably the number of packages that are being shipped on a daily basis, annual basis?
Yeah, there's not a lot of numbers about the number of packages, right? I would estimate that we're talking about a few hundreds of millions of packages being exchanged, right?
Right.
So it's a considerable amount. And the good thing about the region is it has excellent growth still.
Right.
Growing ahead of other markets where e-commerce is already big, where they're growing maybe at average 10%, right? Here you can still see growth of 16, 17%.
Okay,
Yeah.
16, 17, is it? Okay.
Yeah, in certain countries, so depending where you look, but yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And so I know that this region essentially is a very let's say a region that is largely very closely knit. So what percentage of these orders essentially are cross-border orders?
So again, difficult to know from global numbers or studies, etc. From our numbers, what we see. So we have different types of customers, right? We have customers that, let's say they're based in Dubai and they ship across the GCC from Dubai.
Right.
And then we have customers that actually have their inventory scattered and they put a base in each of these primary markets and then they ship around. But in any case, what we find is, generally speaking, we're talking about a ratio of 60% domestic orders and 40% are cross-border.
Wow.
But this 40% cross-border is really GCC cross-border. If if you go out of the GCC, it's barely negligible. So we have some customers that ship to US, China, Europe, etc.
Right.
But that doesn't
That's
really.
a minimal. That should be ideally a very small number, right?
Yeah.
And even within this cross-border transactions, orders, right? So, do you think that majority of them essentially comes, or rather goes from UAE to other countries, or how is that? I mean, I understand that the cross-border is about 40%, but is a certain country driving this number in higher proportions than certain others?
Yeah. I think for the cross-border, the UAE is the engine, let's say, right? And it's still very much based here. Of course, when you look at domestic shipping, right, I think Saudi is much more intense and there's a lot more going on there than here in the UAE.
I'm sorry, I did not get you. So you mean to say that the domestic fulfillment is essentially higher in Saudi, or?
Yeah, I would say that
they're growing.
Yeah. I mean, the market in Saudi is bigger, right?
Okay.
And I would say that right now, Saudi is not an export market, right?
Right.
That much,
Right.
as UAE is.
Right.
So the UAE is where the 60-40, is probably coming from more.
Okay.
Where in Saudi, you will not see as much export. You will see much more trade within the country, right?
I see. And now, India, we are a country of about $1.4 billion.
Yeah, close to that. Yeah.
Close to that. What are the numbers like there? I mean, how many orders?
I don't think there's. I mean, we could probably estimate it. So 2023 e-commerce in India was anywhere between 95 billion to about $100 billion. The average order value would be anywhere between say $24 to $34.
I see.
So if you do the math, annually that's about 2.5 billion orders, right? And because the country is so vast, obviously an order can get split into multiple shipments. And then there are returns also. So if you account for returns, I would estimate anywhere between 3.5-4 billion shipments a year. That's only e-commerce. This does not account for all the domestic.
Food delivery.
It does not account for.
Right?
It possibly accounts for food delivery because e-commerce, food delivery is a subset of the e-commerce market. But it does not account for domestic deliveries, right? So this is purely the organized e-commerce market, probably that size.
Right. So, switching back to the whole cross-border transactions that we were talking about, right? Is there any particular category that is driving this growth, right, for these countries?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the categories, right, I think that you look at fashion, beauty, right? Those are the ones, beauty, I say cosmetics, maybe. But more fashion, right? Because cosmetics are much more difficult to export because of dangerous goods classification, and you go through a lot more hassle to try to move them around. So for us, what we see is fashion is really what is easy to export and move around, right? And that goes easy. And then, of course, if you look at grocery, food items, that's domestic, right? That doesn't really get exported at all. Also the same like with electronics and white goods, it's mostly domestic. So I would say that, fashion is probably the biggest category in terms of export and circulating across border.
Right. So, I've been kind of trying to understand this in depth, right? I mean, these geographies, these countries have been large economies for a considerably long period of time. Still, a lot of this consumption is actually driven through imports, right? And why do you see, or what could be the reason for it, right? I mean, 60-40 of cross-border shipment is, I mean, it's a big number, right? 40% is actually coming from outside. So why do you think this has been happening so far, and where do you think this region is going in terms of that, right, in the future?
I think it's about efficiencies, right? So when I got here 10 years ago, one of the things that I noticed immediately is how inefficient businesses were running, right? And
okay, I'm sorry to interject, but could you please, define inefficiencies?
Yeah, I'll get there. So, when you're working in retail in the US or in Europe, right? I was used to the problems that I was there to solve was, price optimization, markdown optimization, inventory optimization, demand planning, right? Here, the problems were still at the level of, inventory management, or, more foundational issues that were still being solved, right? How do we manage our stock? So it's only normal that you would find that companies outside the region would be much more efficient, could have, they were surviving on tighter margins, much faster to react, paying attention to the detail, right? And I think that starts to happen here now. And I think things are changing in the sense that, okay, businesses here have developed. They're now starting to look at solutions like Fynd, where trying to optimize your working capital, right? If you have stock sitting in the stores and you're not making that available online, right, you're just forfeiting the opportunity of selling something, especially for fashion businesses where, you might not have that size or that particular SKU back at your warehouse. So that type of problem is now starting to be solved, and I think that businesses are becoming more efficient, and the market will internalize a little bit. But to answer your question, I think the reason why there was such a big influx, and still is to some extent, of products coming from the outside, is that it's so that price is more competitive sometimes, even with the transportation costs, it still arrives here.
Is there any fundamental reason to this per se?
Yeah, I think the other reason I was going to point out is product availability, right? You still get, there's still products that you can't get here.
There's a lack of supply, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it could be lack of supply, I think something that is upcoming here that I see now in the last 5 years is a lot of creative businesses coming in. So creating their own brand, creating their own unique product, right? Previously, if you wanted to have something really unique, or if you wanted to buy something nice and more, out of the box, you would have to buy it from outside.
Right.
Now that starts to be possible here. You actually find a lot of founders and people that are creative, that are building products from the region to the region. Right. And I think that's becoming more of a trend.
Interesting. And where does India stand on this in terms of efficiencies of businesses? Right? Are we having similar sort of inefficiencies, or are we having a very different set of inefficiencies that exist? And also, when we are talking about consumption, most of our consumption is domestic. But is there still scope for some categories where there is not domestic consumption yet, or in any particular categories as such?
Okay. I think inefficiencies, like Joao mentioned, if you have to compare it to the West and India, up until 3 to 4 years ago, I think India was grappling with the same problems of accurate inventory management. Right now, that's become a baseline expectation for any retailer, because today all retailers are not present on one channel; they are multi-channel. The moment you are more than one channel, you have to ensure that your inventory representation is accurate across the channels. We still do come across retailers where you don't have inventory planning done properly, you don't have demand planning done properly. Put aside the larger retailers and their scale. I think the smaller ones, the upcoming ones, are still solving for inventory management problems. They are still solving for the customer experience problems, ensuring you deliver to the customers on time, because you are now competing with somebody like an Amazon, which is delivering to your customers in a day. Right? If you're an Amazon Prime customer, you'll probably get the product on the same day or the next day. If you're in the tier 1, tier 2 cities. So in terms of efficiencies, I think once you've solved for the inventory management problem, we do now see a lot of startups in the supply chain space who are helping these new age retailers optimize their inventory planning without taking the burden of costs on them. Right? So you could work with startups who will set up warehouse spaces for you and manage it for you, and do demand planning and inventory planning for you, and give you an Amazon-like experience. Right? So a D2C brand can start providing the same service levels as the consumer has now become so accustomed to for Amazon. That's one. From a consumption standpoint, is your question more around what categories do we still see where where the domestic supply is not able to
Precisely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think it would be as the Indian middle class goes beyond and goes towards upper middle class, as they earn more, their ability to spend on discretionary items goes up. We do see a lot of growth in bridge to luxury brands
Right.
and beauty.
Right.
Right,
I also believe that category have had the highest growth rates
Yes,
in
in the last
in
few
the
years,
last few
yes.
years. Right. Interesting. Right.
I think Indian customers are very value driven. So it's the aspirational class which is now spending money on things like beauty or bridge to luxury.
Right.
But a large part of Indian population still is a value driven, money conscious customer base.
Interesting. Very nice. In general, what are some of the large problems that Fynd has actually helped some of its customers, solve, right? Such as maybe the RTO problems
Yeah.
and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So I think I'll break this down into two parts,
Sure.
right? So the first problem is accurate representation of inventory. We've seen for retailers that we work with, when they are able to fulfill any order from any of their fulfilling location, we can drive an uplift of about 20 to 30% on their sales.
I see.
Right. What this means is when you have all your inventory available everywhere, there's a direct top line impact of about 20 to 30%.
Wow.
Right. That's huge. But while this is the case, the reality also is that in India, returns and RTOs are a huge problem.
I see.
Right. RTOs are essentially deliveries where you go to deliver to the customer. The customer is not at home, and then it comes back
Okay.
without being opened. Right.
Right.
So what we are now trying to solve for,
Could you give a sense of what these numbers could be?
it could be as high as 30 to 40% for apparel and footwear.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, this includes both returns and RTOs. If I have to break this down further, return would be anywhere between 15 to 20%, and then the rest 15% would possibly be RTOs.
I see.
Right.
Interesting.
Returns is more of a size mismatch issue. You change your mind, you get a better deal elsewhere, those kind of issues. But RTO, interestingly, the behavior that we've seen is that the RTO percentages on prepaid orders is as less as 0.5 to 2%. Whereas if it's a cash on delivery order, it is as high as 15 to 20%.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So
That's what, like 100x?
yeah.
Okay.
So at Fynd, we did this experiment, and we don't support cash on delivery on our own marketplace anymore. But we had a very large RTO problem, and we were the first and the only marketplace to disable cash on delivery as a payment option on our platform.
Okay.
Right. We did have a slight impact on our top line,
Right.
but the bottom line was so much better because when there's an RTO, you are not only paying for the forward cost, you are also paying for the return logistics cost.
Right. If I were to ask you, like, how slight is slight?
About 25 to 30%.
Okay.
Top
like
line
one-
impact.
Top line.
Top line impact. But the bottom line was probably better by about 15 to 20%.
Yes.
Right. So net we would make more money than otherwise.
Unit economics is much better.
Much better.
Interesting. And anyway, I mean, how have you helped the brands kind of overcome this? Is there any particular feature, tools, or anything that you have kind of integrated or used or developed yourself
Yeah.
to kind of have this made better?
Sure. So from a technology standpoint, we now have something called what we call as a auto address validator.
I see.
So one of the problems is in India, if you go to tier 4 cities and beyond, right, or tier 3, tier 4 cities and beyond, the addresses are not very standardized, right? So some address could be, hey, come to a temple over here and then give me a call. That could be the address.
Right.
Right. So how do you solve for those problems? So what you're doing is on our platform on the checkout, we have some smart validations. So as and when customers entering their address details, we would notify them and ask them if this is the address that you meant for it to be, or if the address seems a bit suspicious, we would essentially tell them that, hey, this is probably not the right address.
Right.
Why don't you choose a location on the map instead, right?
Right.
So we would then derive coordinates from the location and then pass it on to courier partners
Right.
to ensure that the RTO rates are much, much lower.
Nice. By the way, so to all of you watching, I personally don't put in my address. I just go and select the location. So please do comment as to what you guys do. I mean, do you guys actually put in the address and then the location, or just the location and then say? Right. So as you know, as we move forward, there's a specific area that I would probably want to focus. That's the last mile delivery, right, in the region. And whenever I've talked to peers or friends in the region who have been working with e-commerce players, one of the primary concerns that they have is the lack of a good last mile delivery. How much of it is true? How much of it is just not so much?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer, really. Last mile is always difficult, and that's why we're here, hopefully, to solve some of these issues. But it continues to be tricky, right? I think, to be fair, things have improved a lot. But there's still a lot of improvement to be made, right? And this particular region, we face specific challenges. I think for example, the cash on delivery is an old problem. And I find it funny, like what Ronak is saying, because I always see these, these reports saying, here in this region, up to 50% of customers prefer cash on delivery. But if I look at our data, cash on delivery is only 10% of orders, even though our customers make it available on their website. So
interesting. So could it be because of certain categories require more COD, I mean, cash on delivery than others?
I think it's because if you ask someone, what would you rather do, give your credit card or give money, you're going to say give money, right? But then if I put a surcharge of 5 dirhams for you to pay with cash,
right,
you're not actually going to pay with the cash, you're just going to go with a card.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a much better question to ask, if we don't give you the option of doing COD, would you still buy or not? Because that's what really matters, right? As Ronak rightly said, it's up for the businesses to kind of, in this case, guide the consumer into what the right way of doing it is, because RTOs are terribly expensive. Nobody likes them, and they don't want it to happen. Right.
Just to add to that, right? I think what you also interestingly seen, one of the reasons for high RTOs is when a delivery partner goes to the doorstep. The customer is either not there. The person who's bought is probably not there.
Right.
Maybe it's somewhere from the family who's there, who may or may not be aware that there's an order coming.
Right.
So they would say, hey, why don't you come back?
Sure.
That's one. The other is they don't have the exact cash available with them at that point in time, right? So let's say if it was a $100 order, or let's say it was a $70 order, and then I give you $100, it is possible that the delivery partner might not be carrying 30 change.
Right.
And then they would say, hey, why don't you give me change? I'll come back again.
Right.
And then the next day when they go, again, the loop can repeat, right? So we've seen businesses who've started incentivizing customers to opt for prepaid options,
right,
by giving certain incentives or just possibly intelligently identifying that a customer on the network could be a fraud customer and disable COD options selectively for them.
Interesting. So you mean to say that the intent of a user who's doing a COD, a cash on delivery, is essentially lower than a person who's probably doing a card or...
Yeah. So, I mean, psychologically, you've already paid for it, right? So you are very unlikely to return it because you've already paid for it. You are anticipating for it to come.
Right.
Even though you are not at home, you would possibly have it, put aside at the security or with the neighbor next door if nobody's home.
If I were to extrapolate it a little, is it also because perhaps users get into this frenzy of buying sometimes things that they don't essentially need, then they eventually realize that, okay, maybe I did not need this, and then, okay, fine, it's anyway COD, let me just not do it.
I mean, could be a reason. I mean, I don't think we can probably put a number to it, but yes, I mean, when you've not paid for it, and if it's not need driven and it is more of a want driven purchase, you have about say 4 to 5 days to make up your mind. And then by the time it comes to you, you may decide that I may no longer need it.
Wouldn't it also be interesting to kind of understand which categories essentially drive these behavior, right? For example, let's say food, right? If I've, I'm hungry, that's why I've ordered, right? I'll definitely pay for it and then I'll eat it. But maybe a pair of new shoes, okay, fine, maybe I can buy it later next month perhaps, right? So I don't know, have you guys done any sort of, do you guys have any even anecdotal evidence about which category probably drives it, either of you?
Yeah, I don't think it's, from my view, it's not really category. I think it's more on the customer profile side.
I see.
Right? But I would say that lower value items and categories are going to be more prone to COD.
I see.
People, if it's just 50 dirhams or something, people will just do COD. But if you're buying a $200, I don't know, pair of sneakers or a luxury item or whatever, you're going to pay with card, right?
Right.
So, yeah. But I think the merchants also have a choice and a decision to make. If their product is pretty unique, if they have a unique offering, they don't need to do COD, right? And they won't lose much by putting that barrier.
Right. So, which prompts me to ask you, right? Like what Ronak said, right? I mean, they disabled COD, and they saw some decline in their top line.
Yeah.
Any instances where you have heard any of your customers say that, hey, we're going to disable it, and then perhaps have seen a certain decline in their top line?
Yeah, I think we haven't seen too many customers doing that. I say unfortunately, because I mean, sometimes it plays to our advantage because that's where we play and we have some tools that we can give to help manage the situation.
Right.
But there's a lot of talk, but I don't think there's enough walk from the merchants in making that transition.
Right. Are they a little scared of losing their top line?
Maybe. I think, I think we still have pretty much a business culture of focusing a lot on the customer acquisition and not enough on the retention. And that is one of my, let's say, battles, right? So every business wants new customers, right? And so they think that anything that they can do to get a new customer is worth it, right? But then, if that customer is always doing COD and never answering the door, right?
Doesn't matter.
Then it's going to become an expensive customer for you instead of becoming a profitable customer. So I think it's about, the way I see it is about acquire a customer base, especially when you're starting the business. But also, then you need to nurture that customer base and work on the retention and make your customers really, good customers for your business as well.
Wonderful. Today, if let's say that a retailer wants to actually turn into a omni-channel player, right? What are the options available for him in terms of logistics, the last mile delivery partners, and so on and so forth? And before we get into that question, since you've seen this, this sector grow, how was it back in 2017, perhaps when Amazon came in?
Yeah.
Or maybe a pre-Amazon era, right? And then when Amazon came in, and where do we stand today?
Yeah. So when I came in, there was no Amazon around this region, right? What we had was at a certain point, I don't know when they started, but we had Souq.com, which eventually got acquired to become Amazon, right? And now it is Amazon. And at that point, it was really, a few marketplaces and a few businesses that were getting started. A lot of pure plays. So companies just got started to build a marketplace or to build a brand and sell online. And that was like single channel. The retailers were on the other side, still very defensive about the e-commerce market and entering the e-commerce market, still seeing it as a different industry altogether. But very quickly things started changing, right? So as the market, the e-commerce growth becoming apparent, then all the retailers wanted to jump in. And so things started changing. And all the retailers want to become omni-channel. Some e-commerce businesses start penetrating into the physical commerce, right, with drop-off points or some sort of physical presence as well. So, yeah, I think today we're in a very different place where it's all the same, one and the same, right? The digital, the physical comes together, and businesses really have to learn how to manage that as one piece, right? And the last mile becomes critical as well. I mean, for us, just like for Fynd on the more of the inventory management and sales channels, it becomes about utilizing the full spectrum of possibilities. From a last mile perspective as well, we very early on developed a tool that can be used in stores as well to do ship from store and not just ship from your warehouse, so that retailers could also do last mile in the stores and not just have to completely separate their businesses out. And I think now there's a very good understanding of that, and we see brands that start out and they already start out with a mindset of we have stores, we have our e-commerce channel, and this is our business, right?
Right. And what could still be some of those challenges that a new retailer would probably face in this journey, right? And what should they expect basically coming into it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of still challenges, I think, in general. There's specific to the region, so I don't know if you want to focus on more of the region?
Yeah, more of the region, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay, I think so. The competition is starting to get fierce now, right? Because there's more and more businesses. Now all the physical retailers have come online. We have the marketplaces, we have the pure plays. The pure plays have been squeezed a bit in the last few years. And that's the current situation. Now customer acquisition, as I said, I think has become too much of a focus, and I think there needs to be a shift to customer retention. And that means that things like last mile fulfillment, inventory management become more and more important, right? If you want your customer to be loyal and to come back to you, you need to have the stock available when you say it's available.
Right.
You need to deliver when you said you were delivering.
Right.
You need to make it happen in that part of the journey. And I think in the beginning, people were just, because it was new, they were focused about launching their store, doing their marketing, top of the funnel, bring them to the website, convert them. So it was all about marketing.
Okay.
And the logistics aspect of it and the actual fulfillment part of it, what we call the last mile, became a bit forgotten. So I think now people are investing more and more and looking into what is your customer retention rate, right? Is your lifetime value of the customer increasing or decreasing? How do we move this up? Again, it's not just about getting more and more customers if you're losing them
just
after
to put
that.
in perspective, right? So especially for a new retail player, I mean for an existing retail player but turning into an omni-channel one, what do you think would be the level of importance of this last mile delivery piece, especially because let's say, I don't know, it's in my mind that for a startup, right, who's an e-commerce startup, their journey is very different than that of a existing retail, right? So for an existing retail, what percentage of these customers who are dissatisfied with their services essentially fall out because of this last mile delivery piece, right? I mean, I'm unhappy with the quality of the delivery or the the timeline of it or so on and so forth, right? So what do you think?
I think it's still too high, way too high, right? Okay. You might see people that have, or businesses that have, retention rates of 30% or even lower. And I think, again, that's the big problem.
A lot of retailers just focus on the top line numbers. Things like, how much sales am I doing on a day, how many orders in a day, possibly maybe looking at fulfillment numbers in the sense that what are the percentage of returns that are happening. But we've seen that not a lot of retailers actually focus on the post dispatch to delivery journey.
Right. Because it's not their journey. Is that
no?
what
I
they
mean,
consider, or
no? The bunch of reasons.
Right.
But I think the takeaway would be for you to, like Joao mentioned, rather than acquisition, where acquisition is getting a customer to order or activation, retention is very, very important, right? And we've seen with a bunch of retailers where we've done some amount of work, we've started collecting NPS scores at different points, right? So once you place an order, there's a NPS score that we ask for, right? Like how was your experience placing an order on the website or on the app?
Right.
When we deliver to the customer, we again ask how was your experience with the delivery?
Right.
And we've seen that retention is a direct correlation to a higher NPS score, right? So we've seen when you are able to deliver your orders to the customer in or within the time that you've promised to the customers, the NPS is significantly higher. The average lifetime value of that customer is significantly higher, and then hence the retention also is significantly higher.
Right.
So I think it becomes very important to solve for those inefficiencies. These inefficiencies could come from multiple factors. You could be working with multiple courier partners to deliveries. Some are strong in certain regions, some maybe not. So putting your energy and focus in ensuring that you give that experience to the customer, and ensure that you fulfill your promise, would possibly lead to higher retention for your customers and higher lifetime values.
Interesting.
And I'm assuming Carriyo must be helping retailers do, because we work with a bunch of partners, both in India.
There's a big transition, which is traditionally, I think when businesses start, they see as once it's out of the door, it's not their problem. They'll tell you, oh, your package is now with DHL. Good luck, right?
Right.
But from a customer perspective, right, we all bought things online, and we expect, like, I bought it from you, so I expect you to make sure that it's delivered on time. I don't want to work with DHL. That's not who I bought it from. So it's not my problem, right? And I think we help with that transition. So what we do is first of all, we allow them to white label and put a cover on that experience and say, it's not DHL that is delivering, it's us through DHL. Right, but you're tracking the order with us. We know where it is. We give you control over that, and we'll keep you updated, and we'll do anything that needs to be done to get the order on time to you. Further away from that, or on the backstage, we also give them the possibility to work with more partners, which allows them to decrease the risk and the reliance on only one partner. Right? Why do they have to ship only with DHL? Maybe there's a better balance to have a few partners that compete. And first of all, they can improve inefficiencies in terms of cost of transportation, but they can also make the service more resilient. If DHL is not available right now for whatever reason, they have an alternative partner. So we give them the tools that allow them to reduce the risk from an operational perspective and manage the customer relationship better to achieve that better retention. That's kind of what we focus on and what we help them with.
Wonderful, right? And just to, if you were to put a number, right? Let's say on scale of 1 to 10, how different would be the same assurance of delivery in terms of everything, every aspect, for let's say a Amazon versus a retail brand in the region?
It's very difficult to beat Amazon in that aspect, right?
But let's say that if they are the benchmark and that one aspires to be, which I believe is the case,
absolutely.
Then what would be that disparity?
Difficult. It really depends on business to business, and there's people in different levels of the. But I think it's not that much of a difference anymore, right? We have customers where we show them a dashboard where they can see their service level. How many of your orders have you delivered on time? Considering the promise that you made to your customer. And that needle is always at 98, 99%, right? So what is really important is not for you to be like Amazon, like, oh, you bought it in the morning, you got it in the evening. That might not be what is needed. What is really needed is to manage the expectation. If you promise something, you better deliver it, right? When we come to a customer and we see that, they are promising something and then they're not delivering it to it, the first step is actually change your promise. If you're trying too hard to keep that promise, but you're constantly failing, it means you can't make that promise, right?
Right.
So change the expectation, right? Don't change the operation. And then you can adapt the operation when you see that you're hitting the target too many times, then lower the expectation, right? Or improve the expectation. So I think, if I had to put a number...
But then again, those expectations are also set by your competitors, right? To a certain extent. I mean, if, let's say, my competitor is saying that, hey, I'm going to give you today.
Of course.
then most likely the other business is pushed to say that I might also give you today.
Yeah, but it's also competition in terms of reputation, right?
Perhaps,
You
yes.
might have a conversation with your friend. He says, "Oh no, order from these guys. They deliver in the same day."
Right.
And you're going to say, "Oh no, I've ordered with those guys before, and they say it was the same day. It was 2 days after, right?" So there's a balance to this competition in
Right.
in the promise, and then there's competition in actual fact and what happens, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think some of our customers are already at 8, 9 versus what Amazon would be maybe a 10, right?
Right.
So I think things are going in the positive.
I think on that
trend.
point, right? I think what Amazon has done really well is demand planning and inventory forecasting.
Right.
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 So they know where the demand is, and
Right.
and then they stock products closer to the demand, and hence they're able to fulfill faster. Right. If you think about Amazon, they had to set this up.
Right.
Right. But retailers were inherently built to set this up.
Right.
Right. Like they open stores where there's demand. So there's no reason why today a retailer cannot do a same day delivery. We keep hearing reasons around, it's not efficient for my store. I want my store staff to focus on customers walking in the store.
Right.
But more often than not, apart from the peak times, you would see that the store staff in the store is not catering to a customer, right? They're probably doing other activities, right?
Right.
Why can you not utilize that time and use your store as your fulfillment center? Why do you have to?
And the proof of that is that Amazon is outsourcing their deliveries, so they're no different from a retailer. They're not. They don't
Very
have
true.
their own. Well, they might have a portion of it, but the vast majority they outsource their deliveries. So they're using the same delivery partners that you can use for your business.
Yeah.
Right.
So Ronak is absolutely right. The difference is the operation and the frequency of waves in the warehouse that they have to fulfill, positioning of the inventory. That is what is critical and allows them to do that kind of spectacular promise and delivery. But they're using the same tools that are available to a normal retailer or e-commerce business.
Going back to the Indian story, right? Was there a particular event in the Fynd journey where you have made significant difference to a certain to a certain business, especially on their warehousing plus logistics side? Anything that you could recall that you could probably want to share with the viewers?
I wouldn't specifically say warehousing or logistics. I think a large pivotal moment was COVID. I think not just India, pretty much everywhere. When businesses started realizing the increasing need to be digital first. Right. So take a brick and mortar retailer, right? And you take e-commerce. E-commerce in the last 10 years, the consumer experience has significantly evolved.
Okay.
But retail has not, caught up
to it.
Right. I think where Fynd was able to drive a lot of value for these retailers during COVID and before and after that as well. But the adoption, we started seeing a lot more adoption after COVID is how do we help these retailers unify this commerce journey for both online and offline, right? While we do help retailers with the online piece where we unify inventory and help them ship from the stores, a large part of digitization and transformation that we also do is in the store, right?
Okay.
So today you go onto a e-commerce website, you like a particular shoe. If it's not available on one site, it's so convenient for you to go open up another website and look for it, right?
Right.
A lot of consumers today discover products online first and then they go shop offline.
Sure.
All right. Happens so many times with me. I want to buy a sneaker. I look up for a Jordan near me, but I'm unable to find, even though it might be available in a store close by me, I'm not able to see it online. So the difference that we are making is not only helping these retailers facilitate this discovery everywhere, but close this entire loop in terms of discovery to order to logistics to fulfillment, right? And the way we do this is we provide tools to these retailers by virtue of integrating with multiple partners, right? So rather than going to a retailer and saying, hey, why don't you replace this system? We would integrate into whatever system that they already have. In most cases, this would be a ERP. It might be a point of sale system. We get access to the inventory from there. We make this inventory available elsewhere. Then we participate in the network and then partner with people like Carriyo to facilitate logistics, right? So once we have solved for for discovery, customers come and buy on the platform. Then we would integrate with somebody like a Carriyo to help the retailers fulfill the last mile promise, right?
Right.
In India, I think we now work with about 12 to 15 odd logistics partners. When we started, the aggregators were not in the space, so we had to build out a lot of integrations directly. But globally now, we look at courier aggregators like Carriyo and others as an important partner for us to, help retailers fulfill this promise.
What does the future of logistics look like in the Middle East, right? In this region, I mean, anything around AI, which is big, right? So, do you think that will have a significant role to play in the years to come?
Yeah, it's an unavoidable talk,
The
right? About AI.
inevitable.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting. I mean, we think a lot about that. Our view, and my view, is that, of course, we have all the robotics, automation coming in, but that's, that already exists, right? The way I've seen warehouses where it's kind of a fully closed cube and the picking is fully automated, and there's stores like that as well. And I think then we look at last mile, we have all of these experiments with drones flying around carrying packages. I'm not sure that that's the future. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of modality and different options in terms of transportation. And that's, for me, the real future, is where there's a lot of options and a lot of alternative routes that can be taken. But I think, again, our focus is more on the customer experience. And I think the future, where it's more promising, is really, and where it's still new, is how can we use artificial intelligence and technology to really change the way that people buy, that people get, items are fulfilled. And for us, it's more about that world where you're shopping online, and why would you have to choose a shipping option, or why would you have to even go through that process, right? It should be completely seamless, right? And you put something in your basket, and it just appears as per your preference, as per your need, and everything that happens in the background is completely transparent, and I think that's where we need to do a lot of improvement. There's still a lot of room for improvement there. The way people sell, they present the options for last mile and for delivery. There's going to be a lot of change there, and I think there's going to be a lot of automated and smart, intelligent allocation of orders, management of delivery times, and all of that is going to change the way that e-commerce looks like right now.
Right. Looking forward, what could some of the expectations be? I mean, customers always have different expectations as everything evolves. So what could be those new things that a customer is probably expecting from their delivery partners?
Yeah, personalization, right? I think more and more, right? It's possible to, and we already start looking into that. If this
Could you
person
specify personalization a little?
Yeah. So if a person has bought with you, with your business, right, 2, 3 times,
Right.
10 times, right, you start getting a sense of who this person is, how they like their order to be delivered, right? What are the characteristics? And you can automate that process of picking up on these things and making it happen in that particular way, right?
Right.
Let's say you have a preference where you're at home at this time of the day, and this is when you receive your orders, or you're available to receive it.
Right.
Or you have a certain preference of how you want your orders packed, having the ability to, make it a gift, or, all this kind of
These
customization of
variables,
the
essentially.
packaging. Yeah. Managing this at scale, right, requires you to really have it very into the technology, if you will, right?
Right.
And I think that's really the future
Interesting.
of things.
And also touching once again on the GCC market and the integrated GCC market. Where do you see this going? As in, is it more towards this region is becoming more and more integrated? How, like, how long does it take for a shipment to reach from UAE to perhaps Saudi? How did it? I mean, how did it happen? Perhaps maybe a few years ago.
Yeah.
How is it? Where are we today? And perhaps where would it be a couple of years from now?
Yeah, it's improving a lot. We have a lot of customers that ship primarily from UAE to Saudi. I think that's the most prevalent cross-border
Right.
option. And that can already happen within a week, right? So you
Wow.
put your order on
Okay.
Monday, maybe you'll receive it by Friday,
Okay.
and that's still going through customs, etc. So I think the future for the region, if the region could develop into somewhat of a stronger union, like you have in Europe, where
yeah.
borderless, right? That will definitely help things, right?
But are things going in that direction though?
I don't know. I mean, it's very political. I think we're still far away from it, to be honest. We still have countries working, with different tax frameworks,
Sure.
with different ways of managing things at different levels of development as well.
Sure.
But I think, the future is bright, because if you look at the way that things are going in Saudi, right, with all the development that is happening, I expected like a very quick transformation, and maybe we'll see things happening much faster than what we expect.
And what do you think will Carriyo be, let's say 2030, 20, yeah,
Oof.
I mean, in terms of the scale,
Yeah.
right, and then other, preferably other, from an experience perspective, what will that look like for a consumer?
Yeah, I hope Carriyo is still there, that far away. It's always difficult for a startup to keep up with a trend and be competitive, right? But what we hope, what we're trying to be is really unique. Our unique value proposition started from the fact that we thought that there was a miss between integrating operations and customer experience. What do I mean by this? If there's a problem in the warehouse with your order and it got delayed by a day, right? That should be immediately transparent and automated information that reaches the customer and that allows customer service to manage the situation, right? And what we had was that was decoupled before and still is in most places. So that's how we come in. And I think that's what we expect. We expect for Carriyo, it's going to be about developing further into managing everything that is last mile end to end, going into areas of fulfillment in the warehouse, helping solve some of those issues where we're not there yet in terms of order management as well, and managing those. And a lot of investment into, we want to be the smartest platform around in terms of last mile, which goes back to using AI to, just choose the fastest or prioritize the most reliable partner for a particular order, make the process fully transparent to the customer, and just do the best that you can at that moment in time for that particular customer and that product. So hopefully we'll be a multi-billion-dollar company, and yeah, that's where we want to be.
Awesome. So, Ronak, I mean, I would like to think that, especially when it comes to some of these startups, e-commerce, India is slightly more mature. We are slightly ahead. So what are some of the mistakes or learnings that you have probably noticed from back from India, and you see something very similar playing out in this region as well?
Specifically for startups?
Startups, e-commerce, deliveries.
I haven't had a lot of experience working with startups here.
Right.
Probably won't be able to comment on that. But I think for retailers, large retailers, I think, like I mentioned before, the problem is that retail has just not been able to catch up with the e-commerce and the experience that e-commerce has to provide, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of mistakes, I continue to see, despite it making obvious sense that you should, invest your resources and time and money into technology, people, to unify your commerce experiences, brands and retailers still continue to choose, creating silos of inventories, right? Because it's just the easier thing to do.
Right.
It's just easy to say, hey, put aside 10,000 units of this inventory, put it in the warehouse, start my online business today.
Right.
Yes, it allows you to go online faster, iterate faster.
Right.
But inadvertently, you are creating inefficiencies yourself, right? And
Right.
if there's a way for you to not do it, I mean, we work with a lot of brands in India that do not have a warehouse fulfillment at all.
Right.
And these are brands that have 40 stores, 50 stores, 60 stores. And some of the business owners that we speak to, they're very clear in their head that, why should I have a warehouse fulfillment center when I can only use it to replenish my inventory and fulfill everything in my store, right? So I think consciously or subconsciously, retailers choosing to create inventory silos would be, I think, one mistake that I see across the board, both India and otherwise. There are obvious benefits to fulfilling from a warehouse. You have greater efficiencies. You are able to create SOPs. You are able to ship faster. You are able to provide a better customer experience. But there's no reason why you can't replicate the same processes and SOPs in a store, right? So maybe go back to the drawing board, figure out how you can replicate a similar SOP and processes in the store. Would help retailers only improve their bottom line.
Right.
Overall.
Interesting. Finally, Joao, I would like to ask you, what could be top 3 mistakes that you have committed as an entrepreneur in this journey, and perhaps top 3 advices as well that you would want to leave with to young folks who are watching, who would probably want to build something in this space, logistics space. Yeah.
Only 3 mistakes.
Let's keep it to 3 now.
Yeah, exactly. Same, because you make a lot of mistakes, really,
Right.
and I continue making them. But the important thing, I think, so mistake is sometimes making decisions that you cannot change quickly. So
Right.
keeping yourself nimble, right? So that's a mistake, and something that I advise people is, do something. Try it. Don't get yourself into big commitments, especially the earlier on, the smaller commitments you want to make. You want to keep yourself free to change the direction at any time, right? That's one. I think the other one is I don't think it's a mistake for us, but maybe sometimes what I see is not betting on a very strong team. So we're kind of a company that, in a way, punches above their weight. Our revenue per employee is very large,
Right.
and I think the reason for that is because we bet on good people, right, and really having a strong team. So I think doing a bargain and then regretting that down the line.
No compromise on that now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't compromise on that, especially early on. You want good people,
Right.
strong people in your team,
Right.
and privileged loyalty as well, right? Sometimes maybe technical knowledge is not the main thing, but loyalty, somebody who wants to learn and progress with you, is very important. To be in the same kind of wavelength as you
Right.
as you progress, right?
Yeah, I think, sorry to interject, but then loyalty plus growth mindset
Yeah,
is an amazing combination to have.
Exactly.
Right? Because,
exactly.
I believe that fundamentally we are all building things that's okay for an average human being to kind of adapt to.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
What you need is a growth mindset, which
Yeah.
basically says that, hey, intellectual honesty as it comes, right? Saying that, I don't know if I don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And also saying that I will put in my effort to probably, know more about it. And
Absolutely.
of course, being honest and loyal to whoever you're working with, working for, so on and so forth. Sorry.
Yeah, you want to be with someone who is also in that growth path, as you said. That growth mindset is very important, because you might have a rock star, but their expectation is already being managing a multi-million-dollar business, and they just get frustrated by the starting works of it.
Right.
You're not going to get much value out of it. But if you have a more junior person, but that is so excited to be there with you in that journey,
Right.
you're going to get much more value out of it,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I think the last one would be just to take it easy, right? Because entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. Some weeks are great, some
Right.
weeks are terrible.
Yeah.
But you can't let yourself be too hyped or be too defeated by what happens that
Right.
day or that week, because chances are, you have a bad week and the next week is going to be the best week ever.
Totally.
Right,
I mean,
so-
so true. So these days, it's almost like if I'm having a bad day, so suddenly I start thinking that, hey, I'm pretty sure that, the upcoming day, the next day is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And when I have a good day, I think the other way around. As in something is coming
Yeah,
up.
I'm always very reluctant to celebrate anything. Sometimes my colleagues are we going to celebrate this new deal or whatever it is or not? Let it happen first. Let it sink, right?
Right. Yeah.
But you should celebrate actually, because it's important to kind of affirm your achievements and share those experiences, because sometimes you also get some pretty bad weeks where, and in those cases I just go take a walk,
Right.
walk it off. And yeah.
But I want to pick your brain. So when you hire people for your team, how do you evaluate for growth mindset?
Let me think about that one. So we always ask some questions around, what are people's ambitions? We're really careful about what their CV looks like. It's not just in terms of their achievements, but also, what types of roles and have they gotten themselves into and where their priorities are, right?
Right.
Because if their priority is really a lot in terms of career, we know that we are probably not the best place for them. If their priorities are in terms of learning a skill or learning, that's what we want. Because I cannot promise anyone that, in 3 years you're going to be this, right? But I can promise them that they're going to learn this and that, and they're going to have options of what they want to learn and of what we do. So I think it's always trying to find out, is it a learning mindset or is it more of a career and achievements mindset? And we always go for the first option.
Does age play a major role in this?
A little bit, I guess, right?
As we get older, we tend to be a little more.
It's only natural, right? As you get older, you want to be, you have different concerns as well, right? If you're older, chances are you have a family to support, right? You're a bit less flexible in terms of what you can do in terms of working arrangement.
That's one angle to it. But beyond that, right? I mean, I believe that, provided that two jobs offer the same monetary benefits and all the security and safety and whatever, but one has to, let's say, unlearn everything, rediscover yourself. That's a different challenge in itself.
Yeah.
Which maybe a 20, 22, 23, 24-year-old will be happy to.
Yeah.
Versus maybe a 30, 35. I'm not sure. Even,
I mean, it could also be that a 23-year-old is faster to unlearn as opposed to somebody much older. But it's not to say that age is the right representation of whether they would want to or would not want to.
There are also very good people that reach a certain cycle, and that's what happened to me maybe, like where you're a bit tired. You had a great corporate career life, and you're just yearning for something.
Maybe you're at that juncture to, perhaps
learn something new, go, something a bit more exciting, right? And so I think age might play a role, but it's not the main driver for sure. I think it's all about the mindset where you are in your life, and you might have different phases in your life where you have different priorities, right? Where you're prioritizing more of a career role and achievements, or you're more into learning something new and getting into an adventure, right? And I think that's what it is about, really.
Wonderful. Perfect. Great. Guys, so it was a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
I loved it. And hopefully, let's catch up together again.
Yeah, next week.
Or right after this.
Or not. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see again soon. Thank you.